Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly. My email address is tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today we're discussing a lovely and discontinued variant of the Rolex Daytona. Discontinued after 2015, this is the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Cosmograph Daytona 116520, 40 millimeters and 904L stainless steel. You can see it's 12.3 millimeters thick. It is 46.5 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, and from end link to end link, it has a span of 50.3 millimeters across the wrist with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll zoom out a little bit, put it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. This watch, in my experience, wears well on male or female wrists, and I've seen it worn handsomely and securely on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference against my wrist is 16 centimeters, and you can see it's nowhere near pushing the boundaries of fit. The timepiece looks good, wears flat, it slides under a cuff. It could easily be your dress watch, though it is 100 meters water resistant, shock resistant, and anti-magnetic. Rolex makes its own cases, clasps, and bracelets. It has its own foundry, and it smelts its own metals. It makes its own steel, 904L. It's no harder than standard 316, but it is more resistant to corrosion. In particular, it's not going to corrode when exposed to body salts or sea salt, so it doesn't need to be rinsed, unlike standard steel, after exposure to salt. There's a little bit of a taper to the bracelet. The centers are polished, the outer faces are polished, removable links are fixed by screws. You can see the internals to the clasp are media blasted and polished, and then there are two locks. One is the clamshell, which you can see easy, and then there's a beak and a hook, which is a little bit more subtle, but it is a lift lock system. You can see how it latches. You need to lift to unlock it, so there are two locking systems. Easy link. 5 millimeters of in or out tool-free adjustment. It's the equivalent of adding or removing one sizable link, and then if you look carefully, you can see that there are actually, let's see if we can get the focus there. There are 3 divots drilled inside the clasp with little tracks leading into them, so you can use your strap tool to put the anchoring point of the bracelet further or farther from the center line of the clasp. So 3 different ways. Easy link, removable links, and divots to size this watch. It has a handsome and fluid form with polished lug hoods, polished lug flanks. We have screw-down crown, screw-down chronograph pushers, a crown guard structure. You can see it's a trip-lock crown. The watch is 100 meters water resistant. This is a feature we had from 2000 through 2015, the metal bezel on the steel watch. So steel on steel, that gave way to ceramic on steel for 2016. The watch looks a little bit more classical like this. We have a tachymeter scale, which allows you to gauge the speed of something moving very fast, unless you're good with mental decimals, in which case, of course, you could scale down. It is a motorsports-themed watch, and that is why it is called Daytona. That was always the idea. It is the winner's gift each year at the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona sports car race, not NASCAR, IMSA, but on the same track. We have a black lacquered dial base with white gold crown, hands, and indices. We have a concentric pattern on the contrasting metal races for the sub-registers, and you can see baton hands for all registers as well as at center. We have a index at the end of the Lancet-style seconds hand, and we have white on black printing for the dial. It is a no-date dial, which means it's nicely balanced. The watch does feature hacking or stop seconds, and it does include these screw downs. It has a column wheel for crisp actuation, caliber 4130, Rolex manufacturer movement inside, has a column wheel for crisp operation, and a vertical clutch so there's no jump to the seconds hand when you start it. And because of the vertical clutch, you can leave the chronograph running with no additional hazard to the movement. It uses a rotor bearing instead of a jeweled staff for better shock resistance. The caliber 4130 back in 2000 was the first Rolex movement to use a rotor bearing. Winds in both directions, 72-hour power reserve. It is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer, and Rolex, of course, cases up these watches and tests them beyond chronometer standards. So think of the chronometer tolerances as really the bare minimum for this watch. Beats weight 8 beats per second, pivots on 44 joules. It has a full balance bridge with a free sprung index for toughness and shock resistance, and overcoil hairspring made by hand so that in any physical position with respect to gravity, it will keep even and equal time. And then the hairspring is made of what Rolex calls parachrom blue, a corrosion resistant and anti-magnetic blue oxidized niobium zirconium alloy, so the watch is shock tolerant, anti-magnetic, and highly water resistant. All of that, and it could be worn on a male or female wrist for formal or informal use. Reach out to tmosso@thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of this Rolex Oyster Perpetual Cosmograph Daytona.